everybody. My name is Miles, and this is X Raced, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. I'm back with Ian Erskine, the Managing Director and CEO of ACI Global and e-Quip. He's joining us once again to unpack another topic that's highly relevant for organizations everywhere: how performance analysis, evaluation, internal audits, self assessment, and continuous improvement can help leaders build stronger organizations and better outcomes for their people. Ian has spent more than 4 decades helping organizations improve performance, build capability, strengthen leadership, and create sustainable success through accelerating continuous improvement, or ACI. He's been helping us understand that quality isn't just about systems and processes, it's also about developing people, managing knowledge, and creating a future ready culture. So here he is. Hi, Ian. Welcome back to X Raced.
And good morning to you,
Good
Miles.
morning.
Again, that lovely beaming smile greets me and makes me even more enthusiastic
Yes.
and even aspirational.
Thank you.
And because that's a very interesting point, because two people is better than one. So if the people that you get to know and you're speaking with, you can bounce ideas off, and it comes so natural because your look, your body and face language bounces backwards and forwards, and that drives people to be happy, number one,
Mm-hmm.
drives that aspiration and willing to go that one step further.
Uh-huh. I
Yeah.
agree. I
So
agree.
and I hope everyone else had a wonderful weekend, and thanks for joining us. And again, we look forward to your comments. And because, as you all know, we've built up with Miles's help a significant body of knowledge. And at this very time, we're looking at ways of streamlining that and giving people a quicker a link or a quicker direction to that body of knowledge. And
Mm-hmm.
it's free for everyone. It's there for people to use. And we look forward to, again, comments on that as well. And yes, I'm looking forward to today's episode.
Yes, and I agree with what you said earlier. Two people are better than one because I've been having a hard time talking to myself. I'm just kidding. I don't get enough knowledge. I mean, compared to talking to someone like you who has a lot. So thank you so much, Ian, for your time today. Let's kick this off. We're quite familiar that a lot of organizations collect data about performance, but not all of them truly understand what it's telling them about their people. So from your experience, Ian, how can leaders turn performance analysis into a practical tool for developing capability, engagement, and long term success rather than just another reporting exercise?
And as you said, an important exercise. And quite often I get this when I talk to organisations, and they quite often come back to me. Oh no, we've been able to capture so much information. Our data centre is building up with all this data and so forth. And then I just asked them a very simple question. I said, how does that leapfrog across to performance and improving your strategy and your overall direction of your business?
Mhm.
And they sort of then hum and ha, and then they say, well, yeah, we've got, that we discuss that at business review and we do our audits and so forth. But that's when I then take them back to the very start. Now, this leads off from leadership. We have to have leadership, and leadership have to be prepared to lead and perform. Now,
Mhm.
with and quite again, businesses quite often map their processes, right? But where they tend to lack is the people that are leading those processes. We call that the process owners.
Ah,
Now, every process owner within a business needs, as I said, needs to be able to lead. They need to be able to have the capability and the skills, and above all, that knowledge of the business, that knowledge of its strategic direction for those processes to work efficiently. And that's where the really switched on organisations, their leadership team challenges the process owners to go that one step better.
ah,
Look at your performance indicators. Okay, so where is that process actually performing to its best, and where is there improvements that you can find. And as you know, we always talk about accelerating continuous improvement in that process. And if you're challenging and the leadership team is challenging the leaders of the processes to go that one step further, drive, because that's the main driver of the business,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Sure, you can have your vision and your mission, you can have everything else in place, but at the end of the day, it's the processes, how well they are performing for that to be actually demonstrating that the organization is going to be one step ahead of all their competitors.
Yeah, great point. Because it's easy to get caught up in dashboards, reports, and KPIs. But when you connect that information back to people development, people engagement, and real decision making, I think that's when analysis and evaluation start creating genuine value. And of course, gathering information is only part of the story. What organizations do with that information is where the real difference begins. So, once they have it, what do you think separates companies that simply measure performance from those that genuinely evaluate it, learn from it, and use it to strengthen leadership culture and decision making?
Yeah, well, this comes back to, as we've just mentioned, leadership and weaknesses in leadership activities. And this is where we talk about the policy establishment and communication. So before processes, you've got to have your policies in place, and you've got to have everyone walking and talking those policies. Because if those policies aren't adhered to, sooner or later it gets back to a issue or a failure with rule of law, primary duty of care, or chain of responsibility. Now, those three are critical in everything we do, and everyone must understand their role in understanding those three key elements. And so we
Uh-huh.
look at policy establishment and communication, the managing of processes, the managing of resources. So, yes, you've got to have educated, capable, and skillful people leading and owning the processes. And again, it goes back. Process owner is a very powerful word, but it is very, very critical because the leaders that are in charge of a process. Now, my dear, you're very much in charge of the process in reference to podcasting and marketing within
Mm-hmm.
X-rays. So it's beholden of you to be able to step up and push and push and push so you're improving all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
to be able to improve, you've got to be able to communicate your good feelings, your successes, but you've also got to be able to communicate, wow, okay, we need to improve in that now. It can't just be up to you. You have to
Mm-hmm.
be able to have people come to you who are involved in that process,
Yeah.
delivering that process. You have to be able to have people come to you with the issues, but you have to have them not giving you the issue for you to burden on your shoulders. They have to bring the solution to that issue to you. So you jointly then can work it out together. And again, the togetherness is the most important thing, because if a process owner is doing everything him or herself, right, ultimately that in itself will fail because it can't just be one person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It
Right.
has to be a team that is running that process. All
Mm-hmm.
right. And that's where it becomes very important. And then obviously, then you collectively have to look at improving, learning, and catering for innovations,
Mm-hmm.
looking for innovations,
Yeah.
because that's what that becomes so important. And we'll talk about that in our last episode of this podcast series on equality of an organization. But they're the key things, right? Excuse me. But obviously, then we look at self-evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
So even before you get to doing an audit on the process, you need to be self-evaluating that process. And I know you do, because constantly we talk between each other.
Yeah.
You're always looking at how that process is performing, looking at ways it can be improved. And that's what we're talking about. Those four critical measures have to be looked at within a process and how we look at that performance analysis.
Hmm. And feedback plays a really great role in this because without your feedback, without the comments from people who care about the company or the organization, I think it's hard to improve the processes. And that's where knowledge management, mentoring, and future ready leadership can really come into play. Now, another area, Ian, that's often misunderstood is auditing. Many people see audits as something they have to do for compliance purposes, but you've often spoken about their role in accelerating continuous improvement. How can a well run internal audit uncover opportunities, highlight best practices, and help organizations improve performance before small issues become major problems?
A very, very, very good question.
Thank you.
The only thing I would slightly correct you on is when we're doing our audits and our self-evaluations, number one, we should be looking at conformance. Because if we conform, now there's a big difference between conformance and compliance. Conforming is you actually want to achieve something,
Yeah.
right? It's a bit like smoking. There's no law against smoking, but if you want to stop smoking, rather than have, and countries have put, there are bans on smoking in aeroplanes and things like that, yes, but if you really truly want to stop smoking, you will want to do it yourself. Okay, so that's
Right.
where you yourself will drive that outcome rather than a law or someone standing over you waving a big stick, right?
Mhm.
So, and the other reason why we talk about conformance rather than compliance is number one, all the ISO standards are not compliance standards, they are conformance purely guidelines, right? But the most important thing is if we go down the path of conformance, we will want to achieve an outcome. That's what we discussed before. When you yourself, as the process owner, and you're talking to the people that are actually delivering, well as yourself, also
Mhm.
delivering that process, right? You want them to conform. You want them to bring the issue to you with an
Mhm.
answer,
Right.
not expecting you to achieve that outcome for them. You want them to understand, wow, we're part of this process. Let's live the dream of the successes we're having. And I look at x-rays from when I first joined you to where you are now, you know, you're a beacon. You really, x-rays to me is a beacon standing out there and giving people like ACI Global the ability to put themselves in front of a global audience. Now that's
Mhm.
huge, but
Yeah.
there's so much more that can be done, as you know that, and we've
Yes.
been talking about that.
Hmm.
And so when we're talking about audit, I employ most of my organisations, I employ them to become a lot more involved in self-assessment. Okay. So, and self-assessment can be done by everyone. So you should be
Hmm.
self-assessing how you're achieving each of your tasks, right? As individual people within the process. So they should be looking at how they are achieving their task, right? And this is where it plays a significant role. And of course, with internal audit, and I'll just drill on the internal audit bit for a moment because quite often people misunderstanding the word internal audit, and I think in some respects this is where ISO has left this a little bit open to confusion. Internal audit basically is where you do an internal audit on your own organisation,
Hmm.
right? But to be able to do that effectively, you must have an understanding of being able to audit your stakeholders. Okay. You can't just be doing it within your organization because,
Hmm.
and I'll give you an example, your platform provider, you have to be able to have that ability to evaluate them against your ability to achieve your strategic targets, your objectives, how they support you in achieving all the deliverables of your processes because you're very much web focused, the same as we are, very much focused on the web, right? And we rely heavily on our platform providers. So this is where you not only internal, you've actually got to be able to look external as well. Now, this is where I would like organisations to concentrate a lot more on the self-assessment part of the audit process, because that's where, if you're looking at self-assessment, individually, we can look at not just problems, we can look at, wow, I really think we can do better
Yeah.
in this. I can deliver this better. Sure, I need to go and talk to Miles about that first, right?
Mhm.
So for argument, if I was in that part of the process, I would come to you and I'd say, look, I think we can improve in this. I believe I have an answer. I'll give you the answer. But then it bounce off, as I said when we first joined, the ability for the two people to bounce ideas off each other becomes so important, and that's a vital part of self-assessment. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. And those are great analogies, Ian. And I think it's also a valuable way to look at it. Sometimes the most important insights aren't really found in just numbers themselves, but in the questions leaders ask after reviewing them. And you're right, an internal audit shouldn't feel like someone coming in to catch mistakes. It can actually become one of the most powerful learning tools an organization has for improving quality and sharing what works across teams. And while audits provide one perspective, organizations also need to take an honest look at themselves. Since you mentioned self assessment earlier, it plays an essential role in understanding where an organization really stands. Why is it so valuable for leaders to regularly assess their own processes, culture, and ways of working? And what are the biggest insights organizations typically discover about themselves through that process?
Well, uh, I looked at your work, your research when you did this, preparing for this podcast.
Mhm.
And the key here is leadership. The key here is for leaders to understand, wow, if I get people to bring all their problems and their answers to me, I'm not going to have anything to do. I'm
Uh-huh.
going to I'll end up losing my role as leading this process. Now,
Mhm.
that's the challenge for leaders is you have to challenge and you have to have your team literally running faster than you in this race. Because if they do that, it gives them the ability to move on within the organization. They don't necessarily, you're not going to lose your role, right? But they will see themselves as say, wow, the more I can bring, the more answers and the issues to those answers I can bring to my leader, the better it is. And this is where the self-assessment becomes so powerful, because then you have the leaders of the process having that two-way discussion with the management team, right? So the
Mhm.
management team are bouncing ideas off the process owner. The process owner is bouncing ideas off the team, right? All the way down. And this is where this becomes so powerful, and leaders have to lead. And one of the key things I look for in a leader is that, and you can see it in the workplace, right? When you walk
Mhm.
around the factory and the work floor, you can see that people are actively involved in improvement,
Mhm.
actively involved in their self-assessment of their tasks, right? And that's where it becomes such a very, very powerful tool to develop and go that one step ffurther.
Mhm. And I can relate to that because self assessment often reveals things that are not really obvious day to day. It can highlight strengths that deserve recognition just as much as it uncovers opportunities for improvement. And when organizations combine all these elements together, Ian, they gain a much clearer picture of where they are and where they're heading. What should leaders be doing today to ensure these insights actually lead to continuous improvement, innovation, and sustained success rather than simply ending up in another management report?
Well, again, this is a very interesting one, because this is where you bring it all together in reference to your analysis, your review, and this is where you achieve your outcomes. This is where the leadership team sit down in their business reviews, and those business reviews, I employ everyone within the business review when they're carrying it out to involve the process owners, all the process owners, and they should because they're the senior managers, right? And this should be where the performance at different appropriate levels and functions within the organisation are looked at, discussed again, that one-on-one banter between each other.
Mhm.
And look, and I've sat in some business reviews, and I remember this one quite clearly. I attended probably one of the biggest toolbox meetings I have ever attended. And anyway, there was something like 250, 300 people. And I thought, this is going to be interesting. And it was run by two people, right? And anyway, after a while, one person stood up and said, "Look, you mentioned tidiness and the removal of garbage. We've been asking for weeks to have more frequent levels of removing the rubbish and so forth." And even before this person had actually finished a question, the person said, "Look, I discussed that before. Just move on. Nothing to do with you."
Mhm.
And I was sitting close enough to him to hear him. His exact words were, "Well, that's the last damn time I'll ever get up and ask a question out of these toolboxes." Now that's where you lose the plot,
Yeah.
right? That's possibly an extreme example, but it does happen. Now,
Mhm.
what I'm saying here is that leaders have to be prepared to listen. They
Mhm.
have to be able to take on the negative feedback, right? Because there are times when leaders don't actually achieve what they want, right? And again, I go back to what we discussed some time again when we're all leaving work. Don't forget to say goodbye or good evening to the managing director with his door shut, knock on his door, open his door and
Mhm.
say, "Bye, sir, good day," and things like that. Because quite often they get held up in the issues that they are facing
Mhm.
because good organisations are involved within a community being and a community of their outcomes. This is what we call socialising, right? And this is where it becomes they have to be prepared to accept criticism, negative. They have to
Yeah.
obviously be prepared to accept the good, the accolades, right?
Mhm.
But it's often in that negative feedback where, if it's analysed correctly, you'll look and you will find an improved process, an
Mhm.
improved outcome, which can be then be delivered by that process.
Mhm. In an objective way, always. And it's a great reminder for every leader listening today, Ian. Information alone doesn't create change. Action does. I
That's
remember my boss
exactly
told me
right.
that before.
Yes.
And when organizations consistently review, learn, adapt, share each other knowledge, and invest in their people, they create the foundation for long-term excellence. So thank you so much again, Ian, for highlighting in this episode how the quality of an organization is closely connected to how well it understands, develops, and engages its people. Thank you so much for your
Yes. Yes, and again, thank you so much. And again, it will lead into our final podcast of this series where
uh-huh.
we talk a lot about learning,
Yes.
and that's a really exciting because I guess all my life I've enjoyed learning, and I'm now at the point that I want to give back, and like I said, we're developing the body of knowledge on our
Mm-hmm.
website, and I'm looking at ways to streamline that so that we can get a lot more people coming to our website, having a look at the body of knowledge and taking that away. And again, this will give them the ability to do their self assessments, do their audits, and above all, learn.
Mm-hmm. And I have been benefiting a lot from your knowledge, Ian. So thank you so much again. Can't wait for the next one.
And thank you so much as well.
It's a pleasure. If you'd like to strengthen your organization's quality, people development, continuous improvement programs, auditing capability, or professional certification pathways, Ian and the team at ACI Global and e-Quip have an incredible range of expertise and resources available. So go check out the links we left below. And one final note, Whenever you need a little extra inspiration for your own continuous improvement journey, keep your eyes open for this episode and the others as well on aciglobal.com.au so you can rewatch and access all the information as well. Thanks everyone for staying with us. Stay tuned for more insightful episodes with Ian. This has been your host, Miles. Stay focused, driven, and inspired with X Raced.